Listen carefully, because most people never realize the greatest battle happening in their life is not outside of them. It's inside their own mind. And the frightening part is many people are losing that battle every single day without even knowing it, because thoughts repeated long enough stop feeling like thoughts and start feeling like reality. Think about that for a moment, because if someone spends years telling themselves they are broken, lost, powerless, disconnected, eventually the mind stops questioning those thoughts and begins building an identity around them. And that's how unconscious thinking quietly shapes reality, not all at once, but slowly, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, until one day people wake up feeling trapped inside lives they no longer recognize. There was a man named Adrian, and Adrian spent most of his life believing his thoughts were simply who he was. Every fear felt real. Every insecurity felt true. Every anxious thought felt like a warning he needed to obey. And because of that, he spent years living emotionally controlled by a mind he never learned how to observe. Let that sit with you, because many people never realize they are not only experiencing life, they are experiencing the interpretation their mind creates about life, and interpretation changes everything. Adrian remembered waking up every morning already expecting stress before the day even started, expecting disappointment before opportunities even unfolded, expecting rejection before people even spoke to him. And slowly, those expectations became emotional habits, and emotional habits became identity. Think about that, because what people repeatedly think eventually shapes what they repeatedly feel, and repeated emotions shape behavior, choices, relationships, perception, everything. And one night, while sitting alone, scrolling endlessly through meaningless distractions, Adrian suddenly realized something terrifying. His mind never stopped. Constant thoughts, constant fear, constant comparison, constant mental noise, and for the first time in his life, he asked himself a question that changed everything. What if I don't actually have to believe every thought I think? Let that sit with you, because awareness begins the moment people separate themselves from automatic thinking. And once that separation begins, reality itself starts changing. Adrian began observing his thoughts differently after that, not fighting them, not suppressing them, simply watching them, and what he discovered shocked him. Most thoughts repeated themselves automatically, old fears recycling themselves in different forms, old emotional wounds creating the same internal stories again and again. And suddenly he realized most people are not consciously thinking at all. They are unconsciously replaying mental conditioning created through fear, trauma, insecurity, comparison, survival. And once he saw that clearly, he understood why humanity feels so emotionally exhausted, because people are mentally at war with themselves constantly, and many don't even realize it. One afternoon, Adrian sat in a crowded train station, watching hundreds of people rush past each other, distracted and emotionally disconnected. And suddenly, he had a realization that deeply unsettled him. Most people are not in control of their attention anymore, and attention shapes reality. Think about that for a moment, because whatever controls attention eventually controls emotional experience. And the modern world constantly competes for attention, fear-based media, endless stimulation, comparison, outrage, distraction, emotional overload, and slowly people lose the ability to hear themselves think clearly anymore. And when people lose awareness of their own minds, they become easier to influence emotionally. Psychologically, spiritually, Adrian understood now why silence felt uncomfortable for so many people. Because silence reveals the condition of the mind, and many people are terrified of facing the thoughts they've been running from for years. But instead of continuing to escape himself emotionally, Adrian began doing something different. He started sitting alone in stillness every night. No distractions, no noise, just observation. And at first it felt unbearable. His thoughts raced constantly. Fears surfaced. Insecurities appeared louder than ever. But slowly something started happening. Awareness deepened. And the deeper his awareness became, the more he realized thoughts only had power when he unconsciously attached himself to them emotionally. Let that sit with you, because thoughts appear automatically, but awareness chooses which thoughts receive energy. And once Adrian understood that, his entire relationship with reality began changing, because for the first time he realized he had more control over his internal world than he had ever been taught. And that realization became freeing, not because life suddenly became perfect, but because he no longer felt completely trapped inside his own mind anymore. One evening, while sitting beneath the city lights, Adrian remembered something his grandfather told him years earlier. The mind can become either your prison or your doorway. And suddenly those words made sense to him. Because if fear controls thought, thought controls perception, and perception controls reality emotionally, then awareness becomes the key that changes everything. Think about that, because people become what they repeatedly focus on internally. If someone constantly feeds fear, fear grows. If someone constantly feeds hopelessness, hopelessness expands. If someone constantly feeds awareness, peace, truth, healing, and clarity, transformation begins quietly from the inside out, and Adrian started noticing that shift happening in his own life. He became calmer, more present, less reactive, less emotionally controlled by fear. Not because the world stopped being chaotic, but because he stopped giving unconscious thoughts complete control over his attention. And slowly he began understanding something most people never fully realize. Freedom is not only external. Freedom begins internally, through awareness, through attention, through learning how to observe the mind instead of unconsciously becoming consumed by it. And the deeper Adrian went into that awareness, the more he realized the human mind had been conditioned from childhood to react automatically instead of consciously observe. Fear something, chase something, compare yourself to someone, doubt yourself constantly, and repeat the cycle again tomorrow. Think about that for a moment, because many people never truly pause long enough to ask themselves where their thoughts even came from in the first place. They simply inherit emotional programming from parents, society, trauma, media, pain, disappointment, and slowly mistake those conditioned patterns for their real identity. And Adrian understood now why so many people felt trapped internally, because when someone believes every fearful thought their mind produces, they eventually begin building an emotional prison around themselves without even realizing it. Let that sit with you, because the mind can create suffering even when external danger no longer exists. And one evening, while sitting alone in silence, Adrian started noticing something strange. Every fearful thought in his mind immediately tried to pull his attention toward it emotionally, almost like thoughts themselves were competing for energy. And suddenly he realized something powerful. Attention gives thoughts power. Think about that, because thoughts appear automatically, but attention decides which thoughts grow stronger emotionally. And once someone repeatedly focuses on fear, fear expands. Once someone repeatedly focuses on hopelessness, hopelessness deepens. Once someone repeatedly focuses on peace, clarity, healing, awareness, transformation begins quietly from within. And Adrian realized he had spent years feeding fear without realizing it, constantly replaying worst-case scenarios, constantly imagining rejection before connection, failure before opportunity, loss before love, and eventually those repeated thought patterns shaped the emotional atmosphere of his entire life. Let that sit with you, because repeated thoughts create repeated emotions, and repeated emotions create repeated realities internally. And slowly Adrian began understanding why people feel emotionally exhausted so often. Because most people are mentally fighting battles every single day that never even physically happen. One morning, Adrian walked through the city before sunrise while the streets were still almost empty. And for the first time in years, he noticed how peaceful silence actually felt when the world stopped demanding his attention constantly. And while standing beneath the dim glow of streetlights, he suddenly realized something profound. Peace had never completely disappeared from his life. His attention had simply been consumed by noise for too long to notice it. Think about that for a moment, because awareness changes what people notice emotionally. Unconscious minds focus constantly on fear, problems, stress, negativity, but awareness notices beauty, stillness, clarity, gratitude, and once awareness deepens, reality itself begins feeling different. Adrian started changing his habits after that. He stopped waking up immediately, flooding his mind with negativity, stopped endlessly consuming information designed to provoke fear and emotional reaction, stopped surrounding himself with people constantly operating through chaos and hopelessness, and slowly his internal world began changing. Not overnight, but little by little, because healing the mind requires repetition too. Let that sit with you, because just as negative thinking conditions the mind toward fear, conscious awareness conditions the mind toward peace. And Adrian realized something most people never fully understand. The mind becomes what it repeatedly consumes, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. And that realization completely changed the way he lived. One night, Adrian visited his mother after not seeing her for several weeks. And during their conversation, she said something simple that stayed with him afterward. She looked at him quietly and said, "You seem calmer lately." And hearing those words made him emotional, because for the first time, he realized the changes happening inside him were becoming visible externally too. Think about that, because inner transformation eventually changes energy, presence, behavior, reactions, everything. And Adrian understood now that true transformation does not begin outwardly. It begins internally through awareness, through attention, through consciously choosing what the mind repeatedly focuses on. And the more he practiced awareness, the more he noticed how reactive humanity had become emotionally, people reacting instantly to fear, instantly to anger, instantly to negativity, rarely pausing long enough to consciously process what they were absorbing mentally. And suddenly he understood why so many systems profit from emotional chaos, because emotionally reactive people are easier to influence, easier to distract, easier to control. Let that sit with you, because awareness creates emotional independence, and emotional independence threatens systems built around fear and distraction. Adrian started spending more time alone in nature. After that, long walks away from screens, noise, endless stimulation. And during those quiet moments, something unexpected began happening. His thoughts slowed down naturally. His nervous system softened. And for the first time in years, he felt emotionally connected to the present moment again. Think about that for a moment, because many people are physically alive but mentally absent from their own lives, trapped in regrets about the past or anxiety about the future. And when that happens, they stop fully experiencing the present moment completely. But awareness returns people to the present. And the present moment is where peace exists. One afternoon, Adrian sat beside a river, watching sunlight reflect across the water. And while sitting there, he suddenly realized something deeply emotional. He had spent years waiting for external circumstances to create peace internally, waiting for success, validation, relationships, approval, money, certainty, but none of those things ever truly quieted his mind for long, because peace is not only external, peace is internal awareness, learning not to become consumed by fear constantly. Let that sit with you, because many people search everywhere for peace except within their own consciousness. And Adrian finally understood why no amount of distraction ever permanently satisfied him emotionally. Because distraction numbs awareness temporarily but never heals the root of suffering itself. And slowly he started reconnecting with parts of himself he thought were gone forever. Creativity returned, hope returned, emotional openness returned. Even his faith in life itself began returning quietly, because once fear stops dominating attention completely, space opens internally for healing and clarity to enter again. And maybe that's what so many people listening to this need to understand tonight. You are not powerless against your own mind. You are not trapped forever inside fear. And you are not required to believe every negative thought that appears inside your consciousness. Awareness gives choice. Awareness creates separation between you and the mental noise trying to control your emotional reality constantly. And the moment someone truly understands that, transformation begins, because reality starts changing the moment attention changes. And attention changes the moment awareness awakens. And Adrian understood that now more deeply than ever, because although the world around him had not magically become perfect, his experience of reality itself had transformed completely through consciousness, through awareness, through learning how to observe the mind instead of becoming enslaved by it emotionally. And maybe that is the real power hidden inside awareness. Not escaping reality, but learning how to experience reality differently from the inside out. And maybe that's the most important realization of all, that although the world constantly tries to shape your thoughts, distract your attention, and pull you into fear, you still have more power over your mind than you've been taught to believe, because awareness changes everything. Awareness changes what you focus on, what you emotionally feed, what you repeatedly believe about yourself. And once someone truly understands that, life itself begins transforming from the inside out, not because reality suddenly becomes perfect, but because consciousness changes the way reality is experienced. And maybe someone listening tonight needed that reminder that you are not powerless, you are not trapped forever inside fear, and you are capable of reclaiming control over your attention, your thoughts, your emotional energy, and your life. Because what you repeatedly focus on eventually shapes the reality you emotionally live inside every single day. And if this message connected with you tonight, if somewhere deep inside these words awaken something in you, thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of the Quantaverse journey, because every single one of you supporting these videos, listening, reflecting, commenting, and growing alongside this channel truly means more than you know. This community is built for people searching for awareness, transformation, consciousness, healing, and a deeper understanding of reality itself. So if you enjoy conversations like this, make sure you like the video, comment your thoughts below, subscribe to Quantaverse, and come back for more, because we're only getting started. There's so much more ahead, more mind-expanding conversations, more reality-shifting ideas, and more moments that challenge the way you see yourself and the world around you. Thank you again for watching. Thank you for taking this journey with me, and remember, you are in control of more than you think.